You couldn't buy a site for love nor money, and I was just meeting people. Oh, you can't buy a site, you can't buy a site, you can't buy a site. And we'd lob up and we'd buy one or two or three, and everyone said, how'd you do that? And I said, you decide. How do you build affordable property? You decide and you do it with intent.
Christie's developed some incredible skills along the way. He has a unique set of skills that separate him from so many other people on this 45-year journey of property.
My wife and I, we renovated a lot of houses. We took advantage of the principal place of residence capital gains tax. Why would you not do that?
People can't get into their first homes. Like, I think the average price around here now is what, 800,000?
What we do is high risk, semi-high reward. Subdivisions are less capital intensive.
What sort of deal are you looking for? And he said, I'm looking for a deal that's 3 to 5K out of the city, probably 1,100 square metres. And they laughed and they said, that's a unicorn, it's just not going to happen.
It's not easy, but it is factual.
On market, or are you door knocking? Are you got buyers, agents out there looking for sites? Is it all the above? Like, is there a secret source, I suppose, to that acquisition?
And this will sound silly, but this is what I believe the secret source is. You decide.
Hi, and welcome to Unemployable Property. And it's a really exciting day because we've got so many new faces with us today. And this is the very first session that we call Housing Unplugged. And with us today is our special and very special guest, in fact, Christie Leet. Welcome, Christie.
Morning, Kevin. Thank you.
We go back, Christie and I, to 1987. Although when I say we go back, we were both LJ Hooker for about 10 years, and Christie moved on to the PRD group. And it's one hell of a story that Christie has, being the son of a cane farmer up there in Proserpine. And from there, article clerk to understand the law. And that's what made him a little bit different. When I say a little bit different, he developed an early concept of working on the business, not in the business. He will argue, of course, with the PRD years, he probably didn't succeed quite as well on that story. But he's made it from Proserpine to the Whitsundays and was a real rock star up there doing smaller developments. And from there, he kind of got noticed. He ended up to the Surf's Up here at the Gold Coast. And what a shift that's been. And my goal today with Christie and all the gang here is to ask him a whole bunch of questions in relation to how you got here to there. I mean, the ladder that gets you here doesn't necessarily get you there. So there's some missing pieces in Christie Leet's life that I would really like to uncover as to how that journey unfolded, because you, our listeners, understand that property is a very dynamic business, and Christie's developed some incredible skills along the way as to how he sees the world. He really gets deep and very close to his projects, and he has a unique set of skills that separate him from so many other people that I've met on this 45-year journey of property. So welcome, Christie Leet.
Thank you. I am a salesperson as well, and I sort of understand that sometimes you shouldn't say anything, everything's been said. So I reckon you summed it up pretty well, Kevin, to be truthful.
Thank you, Christie.
So on that, the podcast is over.
Yeah.
I think bits that I've left out there is you get a name like Sherpa, and I think that may have come from the fact that you went to the base camp of Everest. Was that correct?
Yeah, 2017. Yep.
Tell us a bit about that, because it obviously had an impact on why you would name something of a custodian nature.
Yeah, so we moved here. I moved here in 2018, and before that I went to base camp for my 50th in 2017 in September. And to be truthful, when I got to the Gold Coast, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I'd made a little bit of money, and I thought, well, maybe I'll just go and lay on the beach, right through to doing management rights, starting another real estate agency, being a developer or whatever it may be. And I actually went to base camp, had the most extraordinary experience of my life. So I was blessed to spend some time yesterday with a chap from the Commonwealth Bank who's going to base camp with his son in 3 months' time. It's just such a beautiful thing to do with your family. And the experience and the people are just extraordinary. And that had a lasting impact on me. And I didn't know why at the time, but I was down at Kingscliff camping on the beach and thought I'd go and spend a week there. And I wrote down at the time 20 ways to make 200 grand a year working 1 day a week, because I thought I could live on 200 grand a week, and I'm still slapping myself that I can't. I think it's bloody ridiculous that I can't live on 200 grand a year, but anyway. And development was one of those, but there were another 20 odd things, and Gordon Douglas came down and we sat down there one cold August morning and we just shot the breeze, and it just crystallised that I wanted to continue and grow my development career. And then I sort of sat there and thought, well, really, what is all that about? And that's about, I think, what the Nepalese people do, which is understanding what a great journey is. And a great journey is going to base camp. Most people wouldn't conceptualise going to base camp to be a great journey. So they pick the journey, they organise the journey, they carry your bags for you and they make sure you get there at the end. And I think that's what we do for our customers. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not us. I come from an agency business as you certainly used to, Kevin, if not now. And we don't take an agency for 60 days to see if we can sell it. We build stuff to have people move in and to own. Where it's completely different to agency. So, and those people, we just carry their bags for them. And there's so many things that I learn every day that respectfully, that a normal mum and dad type person would never understand. Would go into a property journey just the same way I wouldn't understand what goes into a base camp journey.
Being the son of a cane farmer, as I said before, how do you meet a guy like Gordon Douglas? I mean, I'll give the audience a little bit of background here. Gordon and Archie Douglas owned a company and created a company called PRD, Property Research and Development. Alex McWilliam was the developer side of the business, and research was their game. But the big breakthrough for Gordon and Archie was that they'd managed to tweak an idea that was released by Alex Armstrong and Tony Holmston, where they decided to take a motel approach in the 60s, where they would put a resident unit manager in a building, and they more or less created it. But at the same time, not much had happened until Joe Bjelke-Petersen said that you can come to the Gold Coast to die and not have to pay any taxes, whereas every other place in Australia you had to die and pay your way, although that's changing again now. So basically, all of a sudden that meant that the other states got caught on their left foot. Everyone came here to die. Finally, the Gold Coast is where you now come to live, and it's a massive, massive change. And Gordon Douglas and Archie Douglas are literally the people that ended up with 128 management rights, 128 buildings that they controlled and had the sales on. Mind-boggling. How did you meet a guy like Gordon Douglas in a place called the Whitsundays?
Yeah. So I bought into PRD and I bought into with a guy called Bruce Goddard, and a great operator, Bruce, and his family. And we were wondering whether we stay PRD, stay LJ Hooker, because I was an LJ Hooker agent at the time. And Gordon's a pretty simple thinker, to be honest. We flew down here to the Gold Coast. He took me through his office. He owned half of Airlie Beach. He owned the biggest parcel of land, and his whole pitch was, you can either sell my stuff or you can't. And if you want to sell my stuff, you come into PRD. I said, it was a little bit like just a moment ago, the podcast's over. I said, yep, righto, we're PRD. And look, I spend a lot of time with Gordon, and I mean, Gordon and Archie, and Gordon has a twin brother, Angus. I mean, they're an amazing trio. So Gordon's, and this may not be how they see it, this is how I see it. Gordon's the entrepreneur. He can smell a deal from a million miles away, picks markets like nobody else. Archie runs businesses like nobody else. And Angus is probably the Warren Buffett of Australia in the equities market. So, Angus understanding the financial market, Archie understanding the business model, get Gordon going out there, getting 128 of the 130 high rises on the Gold Coast at the time was just an amazing trio. So, yeah, your question was, how did I meet Gordon? So, yeah, and I'm blessed to spend a lot of time with Gordon. And Gordon always just, you ask him a question, he goes, oh, look, I'm not relevant anymore. He's just turned 80 in February, and he says, I'm not relevant anymore, but what does the research say? Every time. He's been saying that for 50 years. And you ring him up and you ask him a question, and he goes, well, I don't own PRD anymore. And Colliers have got some research. I ring Colliers, I'll get the research and I'll come back to you. So his discipline in following the process in his mind is just extraordinary.
Yeah, it's quite amazing. But I mean, would you say he was one of your mentors to get you into high rise, or did you find your way differently?
Oh, he is one of my mentors. I talk to him all the time. Look, we were just talking just a moment ago about, we first came here, I developed a model or a brand that was less is more, which was developing less on a site than more on a site, and we got some good profile about that. And there's a number of reasons for doing that. I like to do things that are a little bit different, a little bit hard for people to do. And I was risk adverse. I came from Airlie Beach, and the market was closed in Airlie Beach, and I'd just come out of a 10-year or more than a 10-year close in Airlie Beach. So I was super, super risk adverse, and we bought blocks of land instead of building apartments. We did small lot subdivisions and house and land packages and all those sorts of things that got us some good profile. And it became unfulfilling, to be truthful. So we went from there and got a little bit bigger, and we got to developing high-end beachfront and doing 1 per 4, and we got a lot of flack then from people saying doing 1 per 4 when you can do 20 or 30 or 50 on this block, that's a silly thing to do. And we thought, well, finding 9 buyers mistakenly at the start of COVID's probably a better way to go than 50 buyers. It didn't turn out to be the case, but that was our risk adverse nature. And we've done some cool stuff on the beachfront, but it's pretty unrewarding for me. And we then started to move into building communities, and building communities is highly rewarding for me. So I think, answering your question, how do you go from a cane farmer's son to wherever I might be at the moment? I think the answer to that is anyone can if they choose to. And I'm just lucky enough to be working in an area and in an area that I'm passionate about, and it's that simple.
Hey guys, if property development is your goal, we've got a series that'll walk you through the core principles of property development. It's called Find, Fund, Develop. We've taken 4 of the most valuable lessons from our most recent Find, Fund, Develop event and turned them into a practical step-by-step series. You learn how to find quality development site deals, understand feasibilities, how to actually structure funding and execute your own project successfully. We break down real examples using real processes and practical insights you can actually apply. If you're serious about getting into property development, this honestly is the place to start. Head to www.unemployableproperty.com.au/FFD or check the link in the description. Now let's get back to the show.
And in terms of your passion, I mean, you've actually been one of the few creators of a high-rise solution where you were able to reserve, I think, up to 21 units for first-home buyers.
Yeah, well, my son said, talking about the chap who's just going to base camp with his son, my son's just joined our business. I'm not saying anymore, so it's the last done. He's just done 27, so 27 out of 154 we've done, whatever percentage that is, close to 20%. And it's hard. It's hard, and everyone says, how do you do it? And I think the answer to that is a silly answer, but the answer to that is intently. You know, we spend all of our time thinking about how we do that. We don't spend some of our time or most of our time. We spend all of our time thinking about how we do that. And if you don't do that, it doesn't happen. You know, it's that simple. And I was just saying to Shannon beforehand, we're also highly cognizant of building efficiently. So the way to build efficiently is to get one floor plate, take her all the way up the building. There's no transfer, there's no this, there's no that, and that's how you build efficiently. However, you can't have one bedroom stock on the top level because that's not affordable. So my son came to me, and he's bright, and so it's obviously Mr. Generation, or he's got that from his mum. He's super bright, and he goes, "Are you really sure we just can't do all these on the same level?" I said, "Well, everyone says we can't." And everyone had said we can't. He said, "Well, let's just have a crack, you know, let's have a look." And we sat down, and we now do them all on the one level, well, on the first 2 or 3 levels. And it's simple, but it's not easy. You know,
Can I rewind for a minute and just ask a question? You said before that one per floor was dissatisfying. What about it? And what caused the change over to doing a different model like you are now?
I find it 1,000,000% more rewarding dealing with the people who are our current buyers.
Yeah.
What you take out of that, I think you can.
They're appreciative of the keys they're getting. They're appreciative of the home they're going into.
Yeah. So the first one we did, we launched on a Saturday, and we sold in salesperson's terms, which meant we got $10,000 deposits and an expression of interest. And Kevin and I would say, well, it's not a sale, but we did pretty well. And we were they were lined up in the street, and the service was pretty average because we were busy in a small 70 square metre sales office. So we had a function the following Monday, so Monday week, and I went there. I didn't go to the launch because it was busy and I'm socially inept, so I thought I don't need to be going there. They'll do a great job. And I went the following Monday, and I reckon I had like 20 people come up and hug me, and I'm pretty uncomfortable with that, to be truthful. And I'm going to cry again in a minute. So that's why we do it. Yeah. And that's about saying thank you for letting us get into the market, which just sounds ridiculous. Allowing someone to get into the market, but we intently work on value from first home buyers to wherever in the building.
Yeah. Well, it's hard. It's hard in this market at the moment. Like, people can't get into their first homes. Like, I think the average price around here now is what, 800,000 million bucks. Like, to get into something, it's crazy. We're doing a similar product at Coombra where we're building 34 single bedroom units into apartment blocks. Yeah. And again, to help that sort of market.
Yeah.
So get into your design a bit. What do you do? What have you changed in the buildings now for the first time buyer? Like, what does it look like, the first 3 levels versus the middle versus the top? How do you break that down?
Yeah. So I think, first of all, we have to, and I think it probably applies to most, we have to get a site that fits that model. So we've got to get a rectangular or a square site that's at least 40 by 40. So you can get car parking efficiencies. Everything starts and stops with car parking efficiencies. And, people come to my basement at my house and say, oh, you could have made the car park a little bit bigger. I'm like, yeah, really? You don't think we spent any time having to look at that? So 90% of the building goes into the car park. So once you get the car park right, so we're in a zoning that there's one car per apartment. And that took a little bit of research because that's not the norm. And I was at a conference, as Kevin was a few weeks ago, and there's an amazing amount of unused car parks in both Brisbane and the Gold Coast. So, research shows that one car park per property is acceptable, and certainly our sales have shown that. So parking's important. We then have as many levels as we can of, on a 1,600 square metre block, we get 14 apartments per level. We're insanely cognizant of getting 60% gross saleable area to gross building area. So I drive my architect insane. She's a beautiful lady and she issues plans very, very quickly. But unless we've got the ratio on every set of plans that says 60%, it goes back. Oh, it's really nice. I don't care. Got to be 60%, because if you can't sell 60% of the concrete you pour, it doesn't work in our model. So the reason for saying that is on those lower levels, you need more corridors. So that's a trap. Yeah. So that's hard. It is. And like our normal core is maybe, say, 120 square metres. On the lower levels, it's closer to 150. So you've got 30 square metres that you're not selling. Yeah. You've got apartments at less than about 10 grand a metre that you're selling, and you're not selling an extra 30 square metres. So it's difficult. And then we just move up into, a straight building up above that has the things that you would think would be normal, which is, the wet areas close to the core, the wet areas close to each other, etc. But it's interesting. I buy sites as well, and a lot of sites at the moment come with a design on a DA, and the 60% ratio is 45%, and everyone says, "Oh, building costs are out of whack." It's maybe they are, but it doesn't matter what the building costs are if you're selling 45% of the concrete you pour. It ain't going to work, So someone's drawn 2 metre wide corridors. And why do you have 2 metre wide corridors? Because nobody's questioned, do you really need 2 metre wide corridors? And when we know that we need 1.2 metre wide corridors, for instance. So
yeah, so it's trying to minimise that common area for a more saleable.
Yeah, that's certainly a key part of it. It's we get an issue of plans. We meet with our builder. They're on the issue, and we get a couple of weeks in, and then we meet with all the key trades, and it's astounding what a key trade can say to an architect's plans that you would think an architect and a builder would know, or a development manager or a developer, to be truthful. And every time we have that meeting, we always learn something, and it's just little things that just keep pushing us towards something that we can sell more competitively.
It's obviously you're doing a lot of that affordable housing stuff, which is great. But at the end of the day, if the feasibility doesn't stack up,
sure,
no one can do it. We won't get the loan at the end of the day. So how do you see things moving now? I mean, I think it was 30 to 50% of DAs in that kind of built form space don't actually get built. I mean, in the detached, housing, it's kind of 90, 95%.
Yeah.
Is there something that's made you guys successful to get your sites out of the ground, because you got that builder developer model, which seems to be quite popular now, and a lot of developers are going that way? Is that something you've looked at, or is that something that how do you make them stack up when others might not?
So I think the first answer to that is we're into research. So PRD, I still carry the R around. I was saying to someone the other day that the R is really, you've got to be cautious about the R, because one of my highest values is freedom and flexibility. So I don't spend a lot of time at work. I spend a lot of time out of work and spend a lot of time at coffee shops. And if you go to a coffee shop, everyone talks about building costs. And they all say building costs are $6,000 a metre, $8,000 a metre, $10,000 a metre. You can walk out and you'd say nothing's going to work. And most people do. Oh, we can't get this out of the ground because Joe Blogg said down the road building costs are 10 grand a metre. There are plenty of builders and developers on the Gold Coast building at less than $4,000 a metre. That's factual. It's not easy, but it is factual. And there are plenty that are building at $5,000 a metre for other reasons. So it does start with building costs. We're blessed that we have an exclusive agreement with our builder who are an amazing company. So we don't fight. We arm wrestle. and they're bigger than me. I go to the gym every day, try and sort them out, doesn't work. We've got a 13-year agreement, and you know, I say that we're married for 13 years and we don't have affairs. I mean, he gets a phone call every day of the week, every day of the week, and we guarantee them a margin. We de-risk it as much as we can, and we think every day how to make that work better for both parties. And I think when you do that, and the subcontractors know that, and the consultants know that, I think everyone's in the same boat. Because there's risk for them. I mean, they can go and work on a project for 3 months, price it up, and it doesn't happen. That can't be fun. You know, they work on our project for 3 months. We start 3 months in one day, you know, sort of thing. So, yeah.
I'm really keen to go back to the start of the journey. The reason this kind of exists is for mum and dads that want to get a better life for themselves, and, you know, and property development is just one avenue to do that. So those first 1 or 2 projects that you did, what did they look like? And what gave you the confidence to actually do those?
And are we back here in Whitsundays?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where were they and what do they look like?
I reckon that's a cracker of a question. So,
Is this Danny, the one you did?
it's David Denny, yeah. So one of my best friends down here, we always talk about splitter blocks. So I do a couple of those to remind me that every cent's important. So if you go and do a splitter block and make 50 grand, 100 grand, or whatever it may be, you know, what I'm doing currently, you can spill that in a millisecond. And you've got to have the discipline to understand that everything is the same process, and you just got to follow that process. So I think there's enormous opportunities out there for me, my wife and I. We renovated a lot of houses. We took advantage of the principal place of residence capital gains tax. Why would you not do that? I'm currently getting myself, so I'm going to say it, I've already said it, I'm back in that, so I'm going to do that every couple of years. I think, you know, if you make 500 grand on a house tax free, why would you not do that? You know, I think it's a good discipline to be in. So I think there's some disciplines that you can get from that early stuff that really carry you right through life generally. But sort of from my point of view, I'm relatively frugal. I'm not as frugal as Gordon and Archie, but I'm relatively frugal. And I think you just got to stay in those disciplines. And, you know, whether it be a splitter block, whether it be building a duplex, whether it's finding a house. I found 2 apartments, a duplex when I was here, and we created a subdivision. I didn't have the day when I got here. I bought the last beachfront block on the Gold Coast for 3.4, I think it was. That was never had a property on it. And I just thought, you know, I can't believe a bloke from Early Beach is buying the last never built on block of land. I didn't have the money to buy apartments, so I just cut it into 4 lots and sold 4 house and land packages. And the capital intensive side of that was nil. I just paid for the land, and it was like another 150 grand. Stamp duty was the second biggest cost. We put in a driveway, and that was it. So that there are deals out there. I say to like my kids and my friends that to get to like Gordon is, I think you've got to drive past a car that's on the side of the road that's for sale, if you know anything about cars, and say, is that a good buy? You don't have to buy it. But is that a good buy, and is that an opportunity, and is that something I could make a quid out of, you know? And I think that's just a good, I'm into boats, so I do that a bit with boats, and I don't buy and sell boats, but I think it's a good thing to get your mind into, so you can spot a deal, because most people can't spot a deal. Yeah.
Most people, when they're investing in real estate, are buying today and holding for 10 years, hoping that the value of your property is going to go up. Other people are buying negatively geared properties for tax purposes. Let me tell you what Kevin Dooney are teaching people how to invest in rooming houses. What's a rooming house? It's a house with 5 separate rooms with their own kitchenettes, with their own bathrooms, and 5 different people live in these houses.
If you want to know more about that, just find me as Kevin Doodney. That's little old me. I'm on the socials. You'll find me on YouTube. You're welcome to contact me directly. It's not a problem. Happy to help, happy to chat. Just give us a yell and I will call you back. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
So I think an important point here, sorry about that, a segue for a moment. Being Housing Unplugged, we try to figure out in this particular series what makes people tick. Something that you're not aware of about Christie is that he is a long-distance swimmer. I mean, we're talking about a guy who would have a go at, you know, crossing the English Channel. He has to grind that out. There's sunburn, there's jellyfish. He has to swim against the tide. Sometimes he gets to swim with the tide. But fundamentally, it is just you and the ocean. And it is a discipline which you cannot begin to describe. You know, years ago, someone would say, if you want to get disciplined, make your bed, you know, start there. Christie gets up and swims the oceans. I mean, tell us a bit about that. What has that given you as a discipline in how you translate that to the business model?
Yeah. So slightly differently to that, I'm blessed to be here today, because to be truthful, I'm going to get more out of this than your listeners will, because it's been reflective, which is really good. And I was thinking that when I first went into partnership with Bruce, when we changed to PRD, I met his son Justin, who's an extraordinary guy as well. And I think I was 32 or something. I gave up drinking when I was 30 because I'm an alcoholic, and I thought, I've got to stop this or I'm going to self-destruct. And I didn't have much going on in my life. And I met Justin, and I met him at Bruce's house, never met him before. And I said, what are you doing, mate? And he goes, oh, I'm going for a 16K run. I said, what? It was lunchtime in Early Beach, so I can probably in summer. And he said, oh, yeah, I'm going to jog out 8K, jog back. And that was incomprehensible to me. And I put on my shoes and started, and I think the first time I ran was like a K. And then the second time you run, it's 2Ks. And then, you do a little bit and you injure yourself because maybe it's a boy thing, but you're sort of, arrogant and think you can keep going. All of a sudden you injure yourself. Well, I can't go that fast or that quick. And, I get to the stage that, I've run heaps and heaps of marathons and that sort of stuff. So I think similar to swimming, I think you just got to get in to start with. You got to get in. And the secret to anything in life, Gordon and Archie have another partner called John Benton. And what John's taught me is Gordon's a get in person. So, have a crack. John is only think about the downside. So that's all he thinks about. And that combination is a really, really good combination. So I think long distance swimming is, you've got to get in. And I actually got out swimming the English Channel and got back in the boat, and the bloke said to me, you're only like 400 metres away from the change of the tide. And you never, ever, ever know that until you stay in. And you just got to stay in there, and you got to stay disciplined. And a chap before I went over, Peter Gilchrist, who resides here on the Gold Coast, said to me, you're going to get demons that come to you. And the difficulty with demons is reacting to them. So when they come to you, when you're cold, when you're sore, when your jellyfish stung, you just say to yourself, look, I knew you were going to turn up at some stage. Welcome. But I'm not talking to you until the end. And I think that's a pretty good thing. It's a pretty good thing. One of my young guys the other day, completely differently to that, he's just learning feasibilities, and he came to me all excited, and he goes, oh, I said, what are you doing? He goes, I've just proven it up. I said, what do you mean? He said, we're going to make X out of this project. I said, mate, we haven't even settled on the site. We're 1,000,000 miles away from this. Like saying, swim the English Channel and you've done it before you started. There's so many things that can go on. But for me, I like discipline. I like those guys that, I'm a simple person. I like those, whatever the bloke's name is from Facebook. He simply wears the same shirt every day. I like to keep my head clear and keep a lot of stuff out. I'm not interested in a lot of things, to be truthful with you. You could ask me any other topics, and I probably wouldn't have any sort of answer for them, for the things that I'm not interested in. But the things that I'm interested in, I'm highly interested in. So, and I think swimming's a bit like that, Kevin. I just get in, and it's just, anyone, I believe anyone can achieve anything that they want to do, providing it's just one foot after the other, and they have a significant Y factor, because at the end of the day, life is going to throw speed bumps. Life's going to throw challenges that you've got to determine as speed bumps, not walls that stop you. So, every person in this room today's got speed bumps coming today. And if your Y factor is not big enough, my Y factor is similar to those 30-odd people that gave me a hug at that 45 days. We're just having a crack to get it finished so they can move into their homes. That's what we're doing.
I can agree. If you're in development, there's definitely speed bumps.
There is.
You mentioned subdivisions. You've done a bit of that, and obviously you're doing some built form. You've been brave enough or stupid enough, like us, to go over the border into Tweed, and it's quite a difficult market over there. I know you did that one in Cabarita, which went quite well. And you're doing an acreage gated community, which we're just doing one now on the Gold Coast. How do you find? Is it purely, obviously you've clearly got a passion about the affordable, high rises. And when you look at subdivisions, is it purely the margin works, or where do you see the balance? And we like subdivisions because we find the margins quite well, and we're only just moving into the built form space now, so we're kind of babies in that world. How do you look at the two disciplines, I suppose? And
thank you. I reckon there's like 5 or 6 questions there, so 5 or 6 answers there. So the first one is, for me, and this wasn't one of your questions, but one of my biggest learnings of going to Cabarita was that I learned equity is the dearest form of debt. And I think that's a really interesting thing for people to think about. So you start small, and you usually get 2 or 3 people together, and then you divide 100 grand up by 3, and you make 30 grand. Okay. So the challenge is, I think, you may think I'm greedy, but I move away from equity. Particularly at the moment, I think the value of capital is very, very low. That there is money everywhere. So if there's a good deal, you don't need a partner. So that particular deal, I was actually talking to the guy on the way down in the car today, and at the end of the day, he contributed $100,000 to that development and made $3.5 million, and never in my career will I ever pay that much interest again. You know, and thankfully he's a close friend of mine, but equity is overrated. So I think that's a bigger subject. I'm not doing another subdivision because they're not my passion. So this is one that is a legacy subdivision. So it is not my passion, and it just doesn't interest me anymore. So we'll wrap this one up. What we're doing is highly, highly, highly capital intensive. So, you know, not for the faint-hearted. So we met with the Commonwealth Bank to borrow a couple $100 million to do a development down at Cooley, which everyone says is the best development we'll ever do, and they'll say walk out the door and all this sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, we got to get a builder that's going to build 45,000 square metres of concrete up in the sky, 28 levels high, and we've got to find 200 buyers and a banker that's going to hold our hand along the way. So, you know, what we do is high risk, semi high reward. Subdivisions are less capital intensive, and I think, you know, certainly they were part of my journey, an integral part of my journey. So I think if you're doing those, and one of my close friends, Kevin mentioned his father, Alec McWilliam, Jeff McWilliam, is an amazing land subdivider, and that's his passion. Yeah. But I think life's too short, but it's also life is too hard. Unless you're really, really keen to be doing what you're doing, you shouldn't be doing it, because it's just not fun, you know. And hard, problems become super, super hard. Yeah. So a problem that I would encounter in a land subdivision, Jeff would sort out, because it's his gig. That's what he wants to do. And he looks at what I would do on a high rise and he says, you know, that's of no interest to me. Yeah. So did that sort of answer you? Yeah. But I got capital from doing land subdivisions to help us do what we do now. Yeah.
I think something's important here for our listeners as we do this Unplugged episode. We have to look at a few issues here. How does Christie get there? What is making his mind tick? He dropped a couple of little nuggets at me a couple of weeks ago. One is Stephen Covey, you know, seek first to understand before yourself are being understood. So again, he takes that research position in regards to that. And the other big one, of course, Bronnie Ware, a palliative nurse in Northern Rivers of New South Wales, who absolutely got a staggering amount of followers through the 5 Regrets of Dying, where she interviewed people in regards to what's their greatest regrets. And I think that hit you pretty hard.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, and I also think conversely, when you're congruent, I mean, one of my values is health and longevity. So I'm really super interested in longevity. Maybe it's because I'm nearly 59, but I think when you're congruent in everything you do, you're healthy. Okay. So I was blessed to go and do a John Demartini course last year, and they worked on what my values were, and my values are building community. So yes, we are interested in, sorry, that was the other thing I was going to say before, we are interested in affordable, but our main gig is building communities. So I have a strong belief that people can live better physically, emotionally, and financially by living together. That's my strong belief. My other strong belief around that is that multi-generational living is healthy. So if you look in the European cities, that multi-generational living is healthy. So we're endeavouring to do that in our buildings, whether it's in one building or building community. So we arrive at Palm Beach, and, you know, this will sound silly and arrogant, but I got to Palm Beach, I understood the centre zone in Palm Beach between 4th Avenue and 8th Avenue. And I just want to do every development that's in that area, because that's just our patch. It is. And, you know, there's some great people like Paul Gideon's there. He'll do a wonderful development there, but, you know, I'd prefer to be doing it. And we'll build neighbourhoods there, and we would love first home buyers to be there. We'd love right sizes to move into our buildings, or into a building that we've built next door, so they can be close to their first home buying children. They'll become grandparents, and they can move into our penthouses at the very top if they choose to. So I did my values. So one is building communities, one is personal development. So both physically and learning. So learning's really important to me. I love to learn in things that I'm interested about. And then freedom and flexibility. I don't want to be tied down anywhere. Kevin asked me if I do a podcast, if you ask me, I could do a podcast in 6 months' time. I said, I don't know where I'll be, sort of thing. So, flexibility is really important to me. And I think if you're blessed enough to spend most of your time in areas that you're highly interested in, you're really, really healthy, emotionally, physically, etc. Or you tie what you're doing currently into something that gets you to that value, or you're like a lot of people that I know, they're doing something. And a lot of my friends who are very, very wealthy are doing something that they don't like with people that they don't like, thinking that they're trapped in their current environment, which is primarily ego, and they're unhealthy, and it's not a good thing. Yeah, so that's my view.
There's a clue there, if you're listening, and I know you are out there, and this is a big one. Christie's learned something. He said earlier he's frugal, not as frugal as the Douglas boys. With respect, nobody's as frugal as the Douglas boys. And so basically, the point I'm getting to is that Christie also is happy to give his money away. I mean, he's paid, probably given over $1 million, I think, just to help people feed themselves. Can you just give us a little bit of a story around that one?
Yeah. Look, I've come to the Gold Coast in 2018, and it's been kind, like super, super kind, and it's continuing to be kind. I transferred my boat to my son because one day you never know, there could be someone knocking on the door and all that sort of stuff. So we're not we're not set for life in terms of we're not a super capital intensive risky business, but it's a business that currently is super, super kind to us. So I used to go to church. I don't think they'd have me there anymore, but I used to go to church, and they used to, I can't pronounce the word, but is it tithing?
Tithing,
yeah, which is 10%. So we follow that. I follow that model. So 10% of our profits goes to charitable things, and I think aligned to what we do, and in a very basic form, housing and eating, pretty important things for people. So a lot of our money goes in that area. And I was reading this morning, Jeff Bezos said this morning that whilst he's extremely charitable, also his company does a lot of amazing things that help people with their lives as well. So he gets a lot of single mothers that write to him and say that, Jeff, I can't get out the door to go shopping because I've got children, but your Amazon helps me do that. And that was really insightful for me. So I'm going to go back today and really push that. Part of the journey to getting to donate, if that's the right word, 10% of our profits, is we've got to make sure that the journey, the Sherpa nature of our business is great for the people that come along with us, because that's also a very helpful thing for people. Yeah, and it's the same as investing, Kevin. And saving money, if you just take 10% off the top, or whatever the percentage is, that's just my number. You don't miss it. To be honest, it's pretty lumpy. So when you settle a project and you might make $5 million, it's $500,000. You think, oh well, there's 4.5 that we can go and do something with.
The old richest man in Babylon.
Yeah, but also I hate going to restaurants. So I think I don't understand it, but that's me. So I'm a bit of a weird person. I hate going to restaurants, but I love seeing people have a nice time and enjoying something. Enjoying something that's important to them. So if restaurants were your thing, I'd be happy to take you for dinner. However, for me, it's not my thing. So there's plenty of things I'm not happy to spend my money on. Yeah.
Don't be confused here about somewhat the laid back nature of Christie. He's not laid back in any form. An example would that be a few months ago he was interviewed by a group, Urban Developer or one of those, I think it was, and he was asked a question in a stage situation, probably a panel, I imagine. Yep. And they were saying, what sort of deal are you looking for? And he said, I'm looking for a deal that's 3 to 5K out of the city, probably 1,500 square meters. And they laughed and they said, that's a unicorn. It's just not going to happen. Yep. That, for some reason, what would we say, would have motivated you?
Yeah, well, it became clear. And coming back to your question earlier, what should someone who's starting on the journey do? I think someone who's starting on the journey should get clear, because there's a lot of noise out there. So if you're a developer at the moment, like, I'll be here an hour and a half, I'll go out and I'll turn my phone on. There'll be a site on my phone from someone to sell us a site. There's sites everywhere. And someone asked me, what are we looking for? And I think, my gig at work is to buy sites. That's what I do. And I think part of our model is that to digress slightly, part of our model is we're building what we believe are amazing rooftops for people to recreate in, because I think with the world changing a little bit, people are going to have more time, not necessarily more money. So I don't believe people can continue to go out to restaurants at greater frequency. They've got to recreate at home. So that's part of what we do. But part of how I think people are going to live going forward. So recreating at home, recreating with new people in their community, I think is important. And I was asked, what are we looking for? And I think unless you're crystal clear, you never see it. Okay, so I said that I'm looking for a 40 by 40 site within a couple of Ks of the city, etc. And lo and behold, after that, whatever that was 2 months ago, 1 month and 2 weeks ago, one popped up into my lap. And my belief is if I wasn't crystal clear, that wouldn't have popped up into my lap. So I would have been looking at the other 450 that came into my email. I just delete them, and my son's super gifted on AI, and I should actually get him to search them before they get to my emails to make sure they make the list, to be truthful. But also when one pops in, I don't sleep. And I said that as well, and people don't believe that, but I literally don't sleep, because we've just moved into an outcome type business, and I think that's where the world's going. The effort's probably going to be undervalued. Outcomes are going to should be overvalued. So my outcome for my business is buying great sites. That's if I buy. That's almost bad language. And I really will listen to what other people say. And I was about to say, if I buy 2 great sites for the year, when I buy 2 great sites for the year, and it's that important. How you speak is important. When I buy 2 great sites for the year, I can go and sit on my boat for the rest of the year, and that's the reality. And when I'm clear about that, I find them. And when I find one that I think is a chance, we're just on it, like insanely on it. And as I'm sure the other great developers that are in the marketplace that we are in are on it as well. And you need to be. So when you're starting, you say, I'm going to do a splitter. And if the minimum lot size in the area is 450 square metres, any block of land that's got a frontage of whatever it might be, I'm a little bit out of the market, but a block of land that's above 900 square metres, you should be all over it like with a horse wagon. But something that comes in at 800, you just say, no, that's not me. But most people they're just busy. They're looking at all this stuff, and it's
Bulldog and a butcher shop.
Yeah, why? Yeah. Then you go to the coffee shop and everyone says, oh, you can't find that. And I said, yeah, really?
And you did. Cordelia Street, South Brisbane.
Yeah. And when I first got here in 2018, you couldn't buy a site for love nor money. And I was just meeting people. I'd go to the coffee shop and, you can't buy a site, you can't buy a site, you can't buy a site. Then we'd lob up and we'd buy 1 or 2 or 3. And everyone said, how'd you do that? And I said, you decide. It's a little bit like how do you build affordable property? You decide and you do it with intent. You're not looking at everything, because it's busy.
So with that acquisition piece, that's probably what my role in our company as well. Do you find, is it just on market, or are you door knocking? Are you got buyers, agents out there looking for sites? Is it all the above? Like, is there a secret source, I suppose, to that acquisition piece?
There is, I think. Yeah, there is. And this will sound silly, but this is what I believe the secret sauce is. You decide. Okay. When I can't buy 10 sites this year. No, I can't buy 10 sites because my builder at very least can't buy 10 sites. So when it is time for me to buy another site, you decide. And it's a little bit like a lady who's having a baby. When you're having a baby, you're having a baby. Okay. So when you decide to buy a site, you decide to buy a site. And all I do when I'm buying a site is all of those things that you just said. But until you decide, all those things don't happen. So every person I bump into would say, what are you up to? I said, I'm buying a site. Okay, I know a buyer's agent, they got a site around the corner. That's how it works. So, or I've got I live next door to a house, we could put 4 houses together, would you be interested in that? But you've just got to be, in your whole body, you've got to decide that it's time for us to do something. And you've got to be really, really clear in what that is. And all of those things together will get you a great result. And you've got to be disciplined not to buy the one that's not the great result, whatever that is for you in your model.
That's great advice. And for someone that's, had a couple of goals and transitioning into the high rise, let's take opposite your office at the moment. There's an Audi for sale. You got an acre or whatever the size dirt there is. I'm not sure. I haven't done the numbers on
acre,
it.
yeah.
But how do you, I look at something like that. We're only doing some small stuff. We're only starting our journey at build form and go, you know, I look at these big buildings and go, how the heck do you do a feasibility on something like that? Like, is it just finding that, you know, we teach our guys all the time, just reverse engineer what someone else has already done, go find that team and sit down with them and do that 10 times. And by the end of it, you'll get a bit of a feel. Like, is it going to a QS? Is it just meeting with builders? How do you give yourself confidence to then put your balls on the line and go, there's the deposit.
Yeah,
I'm going for it. Like, what for that, especially that first time you kind of get into that. I'm
sure.
assuming it will be an interesting journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So interesting that particular property, I thought I'd bought it 2 years ago. So it at the time was highly interesting to us. And now we're full, and I say to everyone, we're not buying a site because my builder says, don't buy a site, don't buy a site, we're full, we can't deliver. And, you know, the same agent that I thought I'd bought it from 2 years ago says, you've got to be buying it, Christie. It's opposite you think it's exactly what you do, and it 100% is, but I've got to be disciplined not to buy it because we're not buying. But that's only got a 2-story, 9-metre height limit on it, by the way, so it's a hard one. But, you know, if it was a normal 53-metre one, which it is 100 metres down the road, I think the answer is if I was starting now, I'd get Claude to do it. I'm obsessed with Claude, and Claude would do your FISO on that, which would be 90% right. Like, seriously. What I've found in this industry, and Kevin mentioned that, you know, we've been going around since 1987, is I've made a few bob, but the people I've met have just been extraordinary. Okay, so you could easily find someone to help you do that feasibility, providing you have a go yourself. So if you rocked up to someone and said, oh, can you help me do a feasibility with a blank piece of paper, I think you'd probably have a long, hard road. But if you intently had a go at it, and, you know, I've said a couple of things today, like one thing I would do if I was looking at a high-rise site and listening to this, and I hadn't done one before, I said, oh, Christie said you've got to be at 60% GBA to GSA. So I'd simply put 60% in that formula and say that, you know, if we're selling, well, I have to build 20,000 square metres of saleable area to make my projects work. So that's just the scale that we're at. But let's say you want to do 2,000 metres, so 2,000 metres at 60%. We're going to build 3,000 metres. He said you can build at $4,000 a metre if you're clever and intent. So I'm going to build 3,000 metres at $4,000 a metre. That's $12 million for building. That'd be a good start. The rest of it's pretty simple, really. So the build cost. Start with the income cost, the income opportunity, because if you start with the build cost, if you, as I have, and they won't like me saying this, but if you've got enthusiastic development managers, if you start with the build cost at Bow Desert, you'll end up selling out at Bow Desert for 20 grand a metre just to make the feasibility work. You know, you don't want to be doing that. So start at the top end, work out what you can sell them for and make the bottom end work. And that's a challenge, you know. It's really easy in this market to start at the bottom and say, oh, well, you know, if they're getting 15, it's going to be 18 months' time, we can get 18 or 25 or whatever it might be. Got to be okay to say no to stuff. And it's pretty hard when you start, you know. There's a site, I'm on it, I can buy it. But we also, I think, well, maybe to answer your question, ring me up and I'll or email me and I'll send you our template feasibility, you know, and you can put the figures in. But there are lots of template feasibilities out there. But it's not. Once you get a couple of key, a guy called Dave Brown, who's a close friend of mine, who's been at Sunland forever, has helped me with some of the matrices. But that 60% thing, it's a tough matrix. So most people might. It's an arrogant comment, but you know, even if you started at 55%, in terms of the ratio, it's probably a good place to start.
It's not an arrogant comment when you know what you're talking about. It's only arrogant when you say something that you can't deliver.
Yeah. But look, but the real question is, and this is a digression thing, the real question is, why do you want to do a feasibility on the Aldi site? That's where I'd start. Yeah, do I really want to do that? And, you know, you said you're going to put your balls on the line that day. That is the truth. It is. And a close friend of mine, so almost a similar mentor as Gordon Douglas, is a guy called Michael Lasky, and he's built, his father was the Meyer for Meyer, Coles Meyer. So he's been around. He's done 150 shopping centres, and when I was doing equity instead of debt and other forms, we'd always talk, and he'd say, and when I moved, during that time, he'd say, oh, you got any deals? You got any deals? So he loves deals, you know. And I said, I've got heaps of deals, Michael. He said, well, why aren't we doing one? I said, Michael, you do shopping centres. You love talking about stuff, but you do shopping centres. You know, it's 1 millimetre past the shopping centre and he ain't doing it. And he I don't know this, but he's probably one of the most successful shopping centre developers in Australia. And he couldn't be one of the most shopping centre developers in Australia, I don't think, unless he was focused on that. So I think the first question is, do you really want to do that? And if you do, you'll make it work. If you don't, you know, if Jeff McWilliam does extraordinarily well at land subdivisions, extraordinarily well. It does great product. There's zero wrong with doing land subdivisions. If I'm trying to find something for my children to do, I think the small lot model where you buy a 1,000 square metre block of land here in Southport that is in the RD5, RD6 zone that you can do a 250 square metre block of land on is a great model. You know, it almost no capital outside the land acquisition and stamp duty, great model. And you do 1 or 2 or 3 of those a year.
How do you find the Gold Coast for dealing with when it comes to getting your approvals and all that? Is it
Fantastic.
okay?
Fantastic. Yeah.
We've got a guy coming on in a couple of minutes by the name of Mark Hamill, the head town planner.
Yeah.
And so it would be nice for him to know that somebody loves him.
Yeah, and I think there are lots of somebodies. And Mark won't probably want to hear this, but I think it was also good before he got there. You know, it's been good the whole time I've been there.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's fantastic. So we're quick. So our second biggest expense in any project is interest, because we're a geared model. We don't have partners. We're a geared model. So the day I settle on a site, we demolish the next day. So that unless we can do that, we don't do a deal. And part of that is obviously approval. So we buy a site, have 30 days due diligence. You know, there's not much you can do in 30 days. There's not much more you need to do after 30 days due diligence if you're in that phase where you can't sleep at night and you're trying to make a deal work. You get a lot done in 30 days. And we design and lodge in 2 months after that time. So 6 weeks to design and then 2 weeks for our consultants to lodge. So 3 months in we've lodged. With Gold Coast City Council, 4 to 5 months we have a code approval, 7 months we have an impact approval. We settle when we contract, we settle 10 to 12 months. And we're always there. During that time, we document. Once we get our first RFI, we document. Our builder can go to the market with full documentation. We can get a real price from all of our subbies. Subbies know that the job's going to happen. They're competitive. They're our partners, and we're away. So it's interest is cheap. You know, most people don't agree with that, but interest is okay. And you know, sales are good. With Kevin and I spoke about the wheel in terms of what I track. I track acquisitions, approvals, funding, delivery, and sales and settlement. I mean, all of those are pretty good at the moment. You know, if you had this forever, you'd be going okay.
But the tides change.
In
the swimming world, tides change.
Yeah.
Sometimes you swim against the tide.
Yeah.
And some people are saying that the general market will probably have some sort of corrections by March next year.
Yeah. Possibly
Even a slight push into a recessional market, but we don't know what we don't know.
No.
But you don't have an issue because you've got a lot of pre-sales. You tend to make sure your buildings are sold.
Yep.
But you're taking on a fairly ambitious one at the moment with 2 separate buildings with a land bridge. I don't recall the name, starts with S.
Solera. Yeah.
Solera.
Yeah.
And it's got quite a few toys on that top floor.
It has. Yeah, it has. I'm not sure we don't have risk, by the way, in terms of sales. So we've got, and I think at the moment, that for me, that just simply means I've employed a professional sales manager who started Monday. So I'm a big believer in watching what people do and not what they say. So if you watch what I did, I employed a sales manager. So I must think there's something going on there that we need some extra resources. So I do think that section of the market is not as easy as it used to be. I do think that. We are launching that particular project on Saturday to the general market. I think by Saturday we'll have 50 unconditional contracts out of 154 by Saturday over the last 3 weeks. Is that good? I would have thought so. That does include our 27 first home buyers to 100%. So we have 27, all of those done. It's a bit like buying a site. So at the moment, my focus outside of buying sites, because I'm not doing that, is on the sales and marketing side of things. So you just got to get in and say that, you know, it's a little bit tougher than it has been. I come from Airlie Beach, where buildings didn't settle at all, even if you did have a 10% deposit and all that sort of stuff. So settlement risk is big. We sell below market. No, you know, I spoke at the urban developer the year before, and we get a lot of flack about what we sell for per square metre. And you know, this whole nature of going to the coffee shop and skiting about what you sell for per square metre just doesn't interest me, to be truthful. I mean, I just think it's boring as batch. You know, you know, we're profitable. You know, the banks require you to make a certain margin. We make more than those margins, otherwise the banks wouldn't fund us. And consequently, differing from Gordon would say you should sell for as much as you can. I don't agree with that. You know, I think we get to the Bow Desert number and we take 5% off, and we sell certainly initially and most of the way through the project 5% below the market. And I think, well, if we get to settlement and we're still 5% under the market, we're at least some chance, you know? Yeah, so.
And I think you've got a good mix by having that affordable aspect to your blocks. It gives you a different market that others don't have an interest in. Everyone's got an ego in high rise, and they tend to go, look, I've just sold that for 20 million. I've just sold that for 15 million. You've consistently delivered a product that people love, and when they buy it, they can sell it for more. Whereas rarely, when you buy something new, do you get that uplift.
Yeah, and I think that's a good part of our market. We have an internal debate, and yeah, thankfully it's my joint, so it doesn't really matter how much the internal debate goes on. I think people should make money out of our stock. I think they have an equitable interest in it the day they sign a contract, and if they choose to take advantage of that equitable interest, God bless them, I reckon. So it's a good thing. Conversely, if the market doesn't support that, we'd ask them to settle at the end of the day. So, and you know, they should make some money along the way, and either take it off the table or enjoy it for usage.
I guess the commonality we have together is we both have an incredible passion for affordable housing. Me, Future Housing Task Force, Smarter Smaller Homes. It's been my passion for a long, long time. Yeah. And I would love an opportunity to have a challenge with you, say a year from now, where we could work together on a multi-generational outcome on a high-rise solution. It would be an incredible learning for me to see that in action. Up until the day I met you, I was convinced by people like Michael and others that housing was $12,000 a metre, and I have publicly said that. Yeah. I now have to publicly apologise to a lot of people.
It's only because I said, Kevin, I could be wrong, but
well,
you know,
you're building them.
We are, yeah. Thank you.
And I mean, for you to be able to build something, and I mean, I get it. I mean, concrete's an amazing material. I mean, it loves weight. It loves a whole bunch of stuff. In fact, in the whole of humanity, of all the people on the planet, we've now got attributable 80 tons of concrete per every person on the planet. So it's a well-used product. It's been around a long time. Yeah. And you've managed to push that stuff around at a cost ratio and speed of delivery, which is just unbeatable. And it's quite remarkable to watch you from a distance. It's even more remarkable to interview you today, and I thank you for that.
Thank you. Tom.
So guys, any more questions?
Nailed it, mate. That's perfect.
All good?
Well, good.
Thanks for coming on today.
My pleasure indeed.
Really great, guys. That's Unplugged for you. It's a great opportunity for you to comment. Check all the links, do what you like, comment as much as you want, because the guys here at Unemployable are incredible in the people that they managed to find. And again, thank you to Christie Leet from Sherpa. If you want a really great unit, he's the guy to go to. His project's alive. He's still got plenty of stock, and he's not in the habit of keeping it. So it will move, and it will move quickly. The coast is unstoppable. Thanks for listening, guys. Catch you on the next one.
Well done.
Thank you for watching that episode of Unemployable. It was an absolute pleasure having you along for the ride. If you'd like to watch another episode, simply click here, but make sure before you go, subscribe to the channel.